Hello there and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis. The Lord of Blights are brutish figures who equally create and destroy. Swollen in muscle, strength and the twisted power of the plague gods, they lumber into their foes swinging their bubonic hammers. It's a fantastic character, lots of detail and a great open pose. In this guide, I'll follow the box art colours using the power of contrast paints to leave you with highlights worthy of the Eavy Metal finish. But with the beauty of my guides, there's actually very little to do in that regard of edge highlighting. It's only taken me a few hours to bring this model to life, and you can achieve the exact same too. So, grab your paints, grab your brushes, let's get
And we're starting off our Lord of Blights model. He's absolutely awesome and cool, and he's going to be really simple and easy to do as well. So first of all, just to note, the model is fully built, no sub-assemblies, and it is primed in White Scar. Once again, like I always do, I want that nice, bright, vivid finish. First of all, we're going to focus on the armour. And the reason for this is we're going to just build it up first. I'm going to do what I normally do. If you've seen my other tutorials, we're going to create this as an underlayer. This is the colour you're seeing at the moment. When I add the next step, it's essentially painting it up to the edges, not including the edges. This becomes the highlight colour. And it just means we've got crisp, clear, Eavy Metal style edge highlighting. And we haven't painted a single edge highlight. It's really cool, it's really effective, it's really easy to do as well, and it just saves a lot of time. So let's talk about this colour first. First of all, we want Terradon Turquoise. This is the colour for the edge highlight that we're seeing, but I want a little bit of control. We do have these large flat surface areas, I don't want it getting too messy. So take 4 parts of Terradon Turquoise, and in a palette mix it with roughly 1 part of Lahmium Medium. This 1 part is going to help give you that control, it's going to help give you that flow. It's not going to thin the colour down in any way. It's just really allowing you to move the paint with ease around the armour. So you don't get all these sort of drying lines and you don't get little areas of pooling. Apart from where the recesses are, because we want that to happen. So do that, let it fully dry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take Carroburg Green shade. We're not thinning this down, we're just painting it straight over. Now the reason for this shade paint is A, it matches the colour. It's very similar in the kind of tone. It's going to help go into the recesses more. So, for example, that hole in the eye there, which will help darken it down. But very subtly, what it's going to do, because we're not going to paint edge highlights, it's going to go over those edges, and it's going to act like a mini kind of varnish. Not in the sense it's going to give you 100% protection, but it is going to ever so slightly seal the paint down a little bit more and just protect it from general rubbing off and general chipping. It's not 100% guarantee. It never can be. But it does help. So get that done, let it dry, and then we'll move on to finishing off that armour. Next up, we're going to finish off that turquoise armour. So like I said, when I tell you the mix in a minute, we're literally painting it up to the edges, not including the edges, and you get that automatic highlight that's in place. Essentially, there are many highlights in this kind of method, which are very hard to do in traditional sense, where they're not hard, but it means you might end up in more chunky lines than you want, and it becomes messy, and it just doesn't look as good. Whereas doing it in this way, where you're painting up to the edges, you have control. You're literally dictating where that highlight is going to be, rather than trying to paint a highlight where you feel it should be. It's very subtle, it works wonders. Let's talk the colour mix. It is nice and simple. We're going to keep to the same theme. This time we're going to take 2 parts of Terradon Turquoise. So you imagine this as sort of brush loads. Take 2 brush loads of this into a palette. Take 2 parts of Black Templar, and this is going to darken down your Terradon Turquoise nicely. But both are very transparent. What we want is a bit of control and flow as well, so we're going to add 1 part of Lahmium Medium. So 2 to 2 to 1 in the ratio. If you find when painting on is a bit too transparent for you, don't worry. Just paint 1 layer on, and then paint a 2nd layer on when it's completely dry. It's your choice on how dark you want. This is how I've done it. I've applied 1 coat on. In a sense, I'm not just applying a thin layer on, I'm applying it to this consistency. And when you apply it onto the model, you'll see how light or how dark it is. I'm applying it as that darkness and just letting it dry. Obviously, don't put too much on where it starts to dribble down and pull. Make sure you're controlling where it goes. But by doing this method as well, you don't need to worry about drying lines. So for instance, I didn't want it to pull heavily at the bottom here. So I painted it up to just where my fingernail is pointing at. And I let it dry and moved on to a different area. By that point, there would be a drying line. It had completely dried, and I just painted the other part. It's nice and simple, this method. It works really wonders, especially in this kind of style of colour. So get that done, and your armour, excluding the metallics of course, is complete. And we'll move on to the next step. With the armour done, we're going to move on to our skin tone. Now when we look at the box art, it is green. Now trust me, we're going to get to that stage, but we want an underlayer, and we want to trick the eye that there is flesh involved rather than just painting green straight over. We could go to Gutrippa Flesh, which is my intention, but doing it straight away doesn't really create a skin tone, it just creates green. So the colour here is going to be Reikland Fleshshade. Nice and simple, it's not thinned down. Start from the top, work your way down. Use the rolls of fat as kind of recessing in areas just to focus on. For instance, to give yourself a break rather than just rushing and trying to get it all over and avoid drying lines. Just take your time, take it section by section, get it done. There are ropes and bandages. In the sense, you know, there's not ropes and bandages, but straps that are holding the armour together. For instance, the one right where my finger is pointing, and just as an example, we're painting straight over it, because it's just going to add, again, as an underlayer to when we actually fill it in later. So, showing you the back as well, this is what we got. Don't forget the bits are going round the pole. You've got your skin stretched out because it's Nurgle, why not? And of course, we got the 3 heads. Avoid the bones, but it's not the end of the world if you accidentally catch them. Just take your time, get those done. The only bit to point out here is the bottom lip. We're not painting that in the Reikland Fleshshade. I've got a different colour for that. Now, once that Reikland Fleshshade's dried, we're going to do something that's not going to make sense to begin with, but you'll understand when I explain it to you. We're going to take White Scar, we're going to take a small dry brush and simply dry brush all of that flesh. We want to catch as many areas as possible, not trying to restore it to White Scar where it originally was, but we want to catch all the edges. We're not worrying about the maggots, but we are doing the maggots, if that makes sense, but they're not the main focus here. It's just getting all those edge highlights in place. And because a lot of the details are already still White Scar, it doesn't matter if we hit them. And where we've painted, obviously, the turquoise armor, we do need to be careful, but there's enough angles here that gives us a lot of leeway. We're not going to catch them. So, take your time, get that done. What it means is when we paint the next layer on and get that green skin, because the White Scar is restored on the edge highlights and it's buffed on the areas that are more raised, it means when we put that green on, all the highlights essentially are in place. It just saves us a lot of time, just makes life a lot easier. So trust the process, give it a dry brush, including the heads, and we'll move on to the next step. And next up, we're going to tint that flesh to make it look like the box art. So that's why we did the Reikland Fleshshade underneath. As you can see, that undertone there makes it look like it's flesh, but now it looks rather diseased and absolutely horrible. It's Nurgle, it's what we want. So the colour we're using here is Gutrippa Flesh, like I said, but we don't want the strength of this. It is a very strong paint, it's a very great paint, but we need to kind of make it more of a glaze just to really tint the skin to this effect. So take 1 part of Gutrippa Flesh and mix it with roughly 2 parts of Lahmium Medium. It says it's going to be ultra thin, like you can see, and just paint it over, take it section by section. You don't have to avoid the pus spots, you don't have to avoid the sores, you don't particularly have to avoid the maggots. I just have chosen to do that. It's not going to be the end of the world because we're going to add pinks, we're going to have Nazdreg Yellow, so these are very strong, vibrant colours that won't make too much of a difference if you get the green over it, but being neat is always good. So get that done, let that dry, and let's focus on these heads. I've taken 3 colours, moving from left to right over the skin. Agrax Earthshade, Mortarian Grime, and Targor Rageshade. Nice and simple, left to right, paint it over the faces. Just tints the skin more, making it more sort of box art colour vibe, and let it dry, and we move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to base coat all of our pus and all of our maggots, which sounds absolutely delightful when you say it like that. The colour is Nazdreg Yellow. So I'm just going to do a quick 360, give you a real idea of where they all are. Main area, obviously the front of the stomach. You've got a couple of little spots under the sword here, spots over here, one on his chin, and obviously the shoulder, a couple on the neck. Go around, you've got one on the back of the leg there, up here, little maggot there, spot there, and you've got 1 maggot hidden in the severed neck of the middle head, and you've got 1 maggot up here, pus spots there. Nice and simple. take a small airbrush, get that done, and we'll move on to the next. And next up, we're going to take Volupus Pink. This is just going to be simply for our open sores and wounds. So there's not that many, but they are dotted around. So for instance, you've got the one here, the one underneath, the little tiny ones, the bigger ones, you name it. Just go around, fill them in. You've also got the bits of the severed heads and the back of the skull here. And I've also done that bottom lip that you can see. The bit above will be the teeth, but it just matches the box art. So get that done. We are going to do the open sort of sore wound around, but that'll be a different colour, and we'll do that in the next step. The next step is going to require speed, just to really make sure it's mastered and looks really nice and effective. First of all, let's talk the colour. The colour is Carroburg Crimson, and obviously, as you can see, it's about tinting that flesh, tainting it so it looks sore, swollen, and very rotten and bloodied. So the method we're going to use is feathering. If you understand it, that's great. If you don't, let me explain. We're going to take a bit of the Carroburg Crimson. For instance, I paint a bit here, quickly wash the brush, and while it's damp but not completely sodden, we're just going to quickly sort of swirl the paint around to create that nice softer transition from where the paint is into the actual area that we don't want it to be, creating a natural blend. Obviously, the speed part is essential, because what happens is, certainly with this kind of paint, because we're not thinning it down, you're going to get a very quick dry line if you don't act quick. So time is of the essence, but it's very easy to do. So just go in and around as much or as little as you want. So obviously the middle areas we don't need to feather out, because that's the core of all this rotten area, whereas when we get to the outer areas, that's where we're feathering it out. I have done it on the shoulder here, I have done it up here, didn't do it down here. You do as much or as little as you want, and that's the whole point of the model. So get that done, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going with a bone colour, and quite obviously the best colour for this is Skeleton Horde. So nice and simply, forget what you're seeing on the tusks for the moment, because this is not one coat. But first of all, start at the tusks, paint one coat of Skeleton Horde over it, and then focus on the other details. So the wraps that are holding all these armour plates, I've painted over them as well. Treat them as an underlayer. When we look at the ropes, they're not just quite normal ropes, they have a sort of stronger tint to that brown colour, and Skeleton Horde is quite nice and matching here. So you've got the wraps on the sword, you've got this bit on the bell here, that's the rope hanging it. I have caught it on the bell, it's not meant to be there, but the beauty is I did that deliberately. It just made where the brush was angled easier, and it's going to be painted metallics anyway. Obviously ropes, you've got the rope around the back of the neck that's holding the faceplate on. You've got the ropes here too. Nice and simple. I've also done the bag as well, because that's going to be another underlayer kind of thing. So apply all of that, and then once the horns are dry, we're going to go back to there. We're going to apply a second layer, and we're going to treat it like we've treated the armor, painting up to the edges, not including the edges, leaving a highlight in place, the highlight being that first layer. It just creates this nice subtle kind of striped look that you see on the box art. I don't want to go as vibrant and dark toned as the box art. This is the style that I like. Obviously, if you want more, you can add more, or even go to a different colour. But that's what I've done. Let that dry, and we'll move on to the next step. Start with the orange. This is going to be for our cloak, both front, back, and you can reach the insides. The bit of white you see there is the bell. That's there. But you can absolutely reach, with a small brush, all the insides. The colour is Gryph Orange. We want to thin it down, so it's going to be 1 part Gryph Orange to 2 parts of Lahmium Medium to give us real control of the flow. And essentially, yes, there's a bit of pooling there. That's not going to matter. That kind of style doesn't matter too much at all. This is our underlayer slash edge highlight colour. So when we apply the red in the next step, this is just in place to really make it work and pop. So get that done. And let's move on to the brown. Now the brown here is Wyldwood. Nice and simply, what I've done as an example, we'll take this strap here. I've painted it all over. So there's no edge highlight in the sense I'm painting up to the edge this time. We're just painting it all over. But what I've done is, in the actual central recess, I've darkened it. And in the sense of by darkening, what I mean is I've applied a lot more paint than I normally would. So it's a lot thicker, but it's not pooling. It's just the right consistency where it's this kind of darkness. As you can see, it leaves that sort of darker recess shade, subtle edge highlight, like contrast paints do. I've done the same on the bag there. You can see on that rope exactly what I'm talking about. So I've done that on all those brown details. Moving on, we've got the wood. The wood in this sense is black, and it has this sort of rust grey kind of edge highlight. So once again, think of this as our underlayer slash edge highlight. The colour is Space Wolves Grey. So this is both for the bit where we're hanging, the sort of hangman's noose, and the handle of the hammer. Nice and simple, get that done. There is pooling here, that's okay, because we'll be painting black over it, treat it as our edge highlight. So get those done, we'll move on to next up. We're using paints to paint up to the edges, not including the edges, putting those automatic highlights in place from the previous colour. It's going to be really effective and it does save a lot of time. So the first colour is Black Legion, and this is going over that Space Wolves Grey to create that blackwood that we see on the box art. Nice and simple, it is glarish, same as the red. We're going to fix that in a minute, but this just puts it in place and just makes it nice and easy. So that shows you what it looks like. We'll get that done. Moving on to the red, exactly the same process, only this colour is Baal Red. Nice and simple. Once again, it's going to look glarish. We're going to add a shade paint for both of them, and it's going to fix all that and just tie it all together really nicely. So do those, let it dry, and we'll move on to the next step. So as you can see, I've put a shade paint on, and it's really tied these colours down a lot more, bringing it all together. Not so stark and, glarish, but just really perfect. So the colours we're going to use, first of all, is Drakenhof Nightshade. Simply paint that over the black, nice and simple. And it's also going to, as like I said before, the Corellia, act like a varnish. Not 100% perfect, but it does a really good job. Now for our red details, Berserker Bloodshade. Nice and simple, ties it all together, looks really great. Do that, and all we've got left to do is the metallic details. Next up, we're going to base our metallic details, but before we just go to that, I have taken Evil Sunz Scarlet, and that's just to dot the eye on the left-handed face there. Nice and simple. Then we're going to focus on metallics. Two colours here. First of all, let's go silver, and that's going to be Iron Warriors. Now, I've looked at the shield, and it's quite hard to see on the box art. I quite like Screaming Bell as the bronze, but where does that bronze end? It's very bright, the reflective light on the camera photos they've taken. So, essentially, what I've done, the insides here is silver, none on the inside here. You've got the main hammerhead there. Obviously, you've got the crest bit up here, this sort of bladed crest. And you've got the nails that are going through the pole, and you've got the little screws, as well as the hooks. Essentially, that's the silver. Everything else is bronze. And like I said, the colour I've used here is Screaming Bell. So let that dry. We'll shade it, we'll highlight it, and then we'll tint it with some verdigris and some rust. And as we're nearing the completion of the model anyway, we can also take advantage at this stage, before shading, or even after shading, just to do the base, put that texture paint on. If you're copying this guide, the colour I've used here is Stellar Mud, because I want that kind of mudded texture, but I can add sort of thorns and tufts and bits of stuff like that. So you can also do that to save time too. Next up, we're going to shade all those metallic details. We kind of want to have that kind of dirty looking effect. It's going to work really nicely, and there's one overall colour we can just use. So for the silver, for the bronze, I've shaded it with Agrax Earthshade, and while I've got it to hand, I've also shaded the Stellar Mud too, as it was completely dry at this stage. So just nice and simple, shade it all over, let it dry, and then we'll highlight it. Next up, we're going to finish off highlighting our model completely. So we're going to do dry brushing, because it's nice and simple, and it's a great model for this. For our metallic details, and this is including the bronze, we're going to use Stormhost Silver. Essentially what I'm going to do is just buff the armour. Obviously we're doing traditional sort of dry brushing, so I'm not doing anything different, but this is not going to be the end result, because we can add a lot of texture paints later. So, dry brush, both the bronze, both the silver, nice and simple. And then we're going to take Screaming Skull, and this is going to be mostly for the base, but I've also dry brushed all the maggots. I've just hit the things like the horns, little sort of edges of the ropes, that kind of stuff, just to buff them as well. So it's nice and simple, finishes off the model, and once that's done, we're going to add a couple of texture paints, such as verdigris, rust, blood, that kind of stuff, traditional Nurgle, and we'll finish it off completely. Next up, we're going to add a lot of different texture to certain areas, just to finish off the model. Nice and simple. First of all, we're going to take Troll Slayer Orange, and let's take it in its purest form as an edge highlight to begin with. When we look at the box art, the actual eye that we see on the helmet here, it does have an orange highlight. So keeping it like the box art, just take Troll Slayer Orange, just a simple edge highlight. It's the only one we're going to have to do. Then, sticking with Troll Slayer Orange, we're going to fit it down, take one part of this and mix it with roughly around 6 parts of Lahmium Medium. Essentially, you want to turn it into a sort of milky consistency. And we're going to treat this in this really sort of glazed form as rust, and apply as little or as much as you want over all of our silver details. I really aim for the recesses here, which makes sense. You can go and do sort of recess shading around, which you see on the box art, on the screws up here on the wood. I've also put it into just the little recesses of the main parts of the wood as well. But as you can see, it just really adds a lot of detail. It's proper Nurgle corrosion. Talking of corrosion, we're going to add verdigris. There's a method I like to use. So we're going to create a mix of roughly 2 to 3 parts. Stick with 3 because I find that better. Of Briar Queen Chill and 1 part of Nihilakh Oxide. Now, if you're new to my channel and you don't really understand what that does, essentially this can get out of control on its own. By adding 3 parts of Briar Queen Chill, it's the same colour. You're turning this into a contrast paint essentially, but it gives you so much more control. You don't sort of lose control, and when you paint it over the surfaces, it doesn't then sort of smudge them and smear them all. You can just move the paint around until you're happy where it is. So, like before, just apply it where you want. Aim for the recesses, rivets, that kind of stuff. This is for all of our bronze details. Now, I've also added just small amounts of this just to the base, just random splodges here and there, just to add extra detail. Moving on from that, we are going to take Nurgle's Rot next, because why not? It's Nurgle. And I've got 2 uses for this. Once again, the base, but also just tiny amounts into the recesses of the actual turquoise armour. And you can just about see it better on this end. It just adds this sort of oozing slime effect that's coming out, pretty much like we see on the box art. It just really makes it look extra horrible, which is Nurgle. And finally, our last paint is going to be Blood for the Blood God. I've just taken a small dry brush here, and I've just stippled it around the severed heads. Nice and simple, just around the attached skin too, just to add that little effect that, yep, they were alive, and it's just very gruesome. Once that's done, all we need to do, add a couple of tufts, neaten up the rim of the base, and we're done. And there we have it. The Lord of Blights is complete. Now, if you can believe it, and it's not a lie, I owned this model less than 24 hours ago. It's exceptionally quick, easy, and fun to paint character for the maggot killer Nurgle. Now, if this video has helped and inspired, then please show that hobby love, give the video a like. Share so others can find support in painting their models, as well as finding my channel and all the other guides that exist on here. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe. It's that support that helps the channel grow, and equally, supporting me means I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community. So, until next time, do look after yourselves, and happy hobbying.